Hi, Dustin. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I'm really excited to have a conversation, a general chat. But I guess before we get going, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your MSP? How did you get to be where you are today?
Sure, Chris, thanks for having me. Of course, happy Friday to you. My name is Dustin Leggans. Our company, OSA Technology Partners. We're sort of a boutique managed service provider and software consulting shop here in the Midwest, United States, Columbus, Ohio, to be specific. We've been around now for almost 7 years, but our team and a lot of us have worked together in previous lives. So as a foundation, we say we've got about 50 years of combined high-level tech experience. And really what it started out as was just sort of a technology consulting. We had relationships that were existed and built over the years here, and so we started just kind of going out and solving problems, and along the way working with other MSPs, working in the IT space, in terms of these other foundations and platforms that are out there, things like JumpCloud. We ended up in the MSP space, and basically started just trying to control end to end the whole experience for our customers. So we can talk a lot about some of those frustrations or complaints that we heard or experiences, and the ways that we think we can do it better. It's kind of a common approach, of course, but more than that, it was just the idea that there's so much going on in the space. There's so many interesting new technologies coming out. And this was, when we took the dive, it was before, the sort of the AI hype. It was kind of in peak crypto hype. So it wasn't even based on a wave that was coming. We just thought, let's get in here and see what we can do. And honestly, our discovery and integration with JumpCloud was really kind of pushed us over the edge to say, this is something we can build on for the future.
Yeah, well, that's great. And that leads me really nicely into the next question then, which is, how did you first hear about JumpCloud? Where did you first sort of come across us?
I think it started when we were looking for a single sign-on solution. I mean, there's other ones out there. We've had experience with some of the household names, but really we were looking for something a little more approachable. I think on the SMB side, we don't have huge enterprise customers, and so a lot of the things that were out there 2 years ago, you got just a handful of options. And so we started out, let's see if there's something better for single sign-on and identity and access management. And so it kind of just unfolded from there. It was like, well, wait a second, we can look at this. At the time we were working with Sophos for a lot of endpoint management, but just having a general endpoint tool that was integrated with the directory, and it was kind of like, well, wait a second, this could be something pretty powerful, and it was approachable for us from a price perspective. We didn't have an appetite for a 3-year contract and thousands of seats. It really just worked out for us. So I think it was probably a Google search, to be honest with you. And then we got into using the platform, meeting some of the folks on the partner side and on the support side as well, and it just kind of we just dove in, and so here we are today. I think we've been a partner now for going on 2 years. Everyone here has been through JumpCloud certification. We had a high school internship program last summer. We made all the kids do certifications and put on JumpCloud socks or whatever you sent us for them. So it was fun. So it's really we've integrated it into and we use it, honestly, we use it to run the business. I use it for our identity and access management. So we truly are pretty all in on JumpCloud for sure.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you weren't kind of looking for a solution for a particular client. You were kind of looking for a solution that you could push across internally and all of your clients at the same time. That's
right. Yeah. I mean, a large part of what we do in either, we call it loosely asset management, but to us, an asset could be a SaaS account. It could be, an endpoint, or it could be, the website itself is an asset, right? And all the things that go into it. So in our asset management world, we have a lot of access, a lot of data. And so, fundamentally, our own internal hygiene and security, posturing was kind of the first step to make sure we felt like we could build forward before we started taking on more customers and more of their data.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you've maybe covered this already, but what are the main pain points that you would say JumpCloud helps you overcome for your clients?
So I think the biggest one is probably just that observability and single point of control. So, obviously, it requires a certain a set of decisions up front in terms of that architecture. But if you do it right and using in some cases sort of the JumpCloud way of doing things, which is helpful to have, sort of recommendations and foundations on these things. If you do it right, then that becomes really sort of your master point of control, specifically for the users and the user endpoints. We use it a little bit for server endpoint management, but not too much.
Okay, and you work within a cross-platform environment. It's sort of Windows, Mac, and any sort of Linux devices, and a few servers as well that you manage. That's
right. Quite a bit of it's pretty much split down the middle, I'd say, between Mac and Windows. Certainly, mobile tablets and all of that. On the server side of things, we use it internally for access control and sort of some of the command management for some of our utilities. But it's just great that we can have again that single point of access control and observability. The directory insights and the ability to get that data out of there in real time is pretty valuable. So we're not waiting on chains of information. We're from an email system into this system, into this system. I mean, we fully integrated the directory insights into our platform. So it's a pretty sharp connection between the two.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And just on the end user, the devices themselves, I mean, are your clients generally working on sort of company-owned devices, or is there an element to bring your own device in there as well?
Yeah, of course. There's a little bit of both. A little more of that bring your own device than we would like, and that in some cases, but we kind of appreciate the challenge at this point because it's not going away. If anything, it's getting more devices. Bring your own devices instead of device now. Everyone's got 2 or 3 connected things, and so whether that's thinking about the Radius Wi-Fi connection, or if it's thinking about the making sure that those data policies are protecting the company information that's on those personal devices. We welcome the challenge, I suppose we should say, of bring your own device. That is an area, particularly with the MDM and on the iOS side of things, and the tighter ecosystem there makes it challenging. It'd be nice if we could put a half policy on a personal iOS device, but it just doesn't, and so again, it's just, these are the challenges we deal with every day. Even still, JumpCloud helps us achieve those, I think.
Yeah, great to hear. Right, this section is an opportunity for you to tell us what you would like JumpCloud to do to make the relationship even better. So are there any things that you think from a product perspective or a partnership perspective or any kind of perspective, and speak freely, that you think that JumpCloud could help your MSP be more successful?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of interesting paths, and I know some of these are already in progress, and we were thrilled about the recent announcement over Windows MDM. That's a huge thing. Anytime we can reimagine the Windows side of MDM, I think pretty much everyone would agree that would be a good thing. The other part is the remote from a really a help desk standpoint, the remote access. So we love the remote access functionality that's there now. A little less than ideal for things like unattended devices or things that potentially we want to be able to access before users logged in fully. So I think there's some ideas there that we could really, even being able to jump into a system if it's not logged into. That's the main pain point that we see. And so we kind of have to think about that as a contingency when we do a deployment of a stack. It's like, okay, well, what's our ability to get at this device if the user is not in front of it? And then the other thing that we've been talking about a little bit internally is further customization or tailoring, I suppose, of the endpoint itself. So if we wanted to, have, and I don't know how this would work, but if we wanted to have sort of custom deployments that we could create instead of just the endpoint going on sort of vanilla, and then it comes out, with the sprinkles after we get in there and we do our work. Putting together some package deployments. And I know we can do a lot of this with some scripting, but it's interesting to us to think about a single install that does, something. And suddenly then we can, put it on perhaps a thumb drive or put it on something. And so we don't have to be wired in to get a sort of all-in-one deployment piece.
Okay, so moving on to look at another MSP. If you were speaking to an MSP now at an event or somewhere, and you were speaking to them about JumpCloud, I mean, what advice would you give them in terms of around the product, how to be successful with JumpCloud?
I think it's important to really decide, make a decision initially on what parts, and it could be all of the parts or only some of them. But once you do that, make that first decision, give it time, give it 6 months, make everyone have everyone go through the training, make sure you have labs environments set up, and really just, really get into it. Because I think the tendency that I've observed in both, solutions that are offered to us in the MSP space or, solutions that are talked about are these sort of like, snap your fingers and it's over. And that's great. We all love, an efficient, problem solution equation. But the reality is, if you're just checking the box, unless you're really going to get into it and understand what the solution does. And the other thing that you lose if you don't make that investment in time is you just get a stack of tools on top of each other that are half doing the same thing, and it just kind of becomes nasty, from a management standpoint. And so making the investment in your team and training, building lab environments, getting in on the Slack channels, like really diving in to what's going on, and realizing that if the next day there's going to be something new, or the next week. I mean, it's a lot of the stuff that we see when we're solutioning is like, oh, well, this is from a year ago, or this is from, whatever, longer ago than that. And I'll tell you what's fun is when you go and you look at a piece of documentation and it was like, well, geez, this is from last week, and the date, the last update date. So having a pace and an internal process that is constantly refreshing is so important.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Yeah, very good advice. So I appreciate that. So I guess this is more around the kind of charging of the service in terms of, would you bundle JumpCloud to your clients, or is it sold as a separate line item? And if it's the latter, have you had any kind of client objections? And if so, how do you overcome them? Or is it just built into the service in general?
So we've kind of done all of that, done all the things. We're finding that it's easier, especially, and it makes sense because, budgets are really more under scrutiny now than they were even 6 months ago. And so that, those things come and go. But so from a transparency standpoint, we've actually, we used to think that it was easier for the customers if they just, it was like one price. And for a while, that was kind of the thing. Now customers want to know. And so for us, we do show them the line item. We do show them the specific breakdown of cost of a service like JumpCloud or the technology, I guess, and then the support and the service that goes with it. So we're very clear about, kind of what's what. And then in a lot of situations, our customers don't know that JumpCloud is behind the scenes. And that's because we use it so much for sort of our internal pieces of identity and access management and, just endpoint management. So for example, if we have a sort of a management agreement where we're monitoring websites and public assets, or what we call them, we're using JumpCloud, we're using lots of things behind the scenes and our customers don't know. But when they ask, how do you do this? And we do get asked that because we're a small team. We do a lot with a little, and we tell them, well, we have good partners. We have this technology. We use this because of this, and so we're very upfront about what we do and why. And it's never a cost base. I guess I shouldn't say never, but it's rarely a cost decision. We don't just to try to go apples to apples on user costs and all of those things. So when you think about these layers of tools and these services that are out there, whether it's sort of the enterprise grade deployment of something like an identity and access management solution, or it's a one-off deployment of a SaaS product for a small team within the larger team. All of those things from a cost management standpoint, as everyone's kind of started paying more attention to that, really add up. So when we look at being transparent about our pricing and what goes into it versus not, trying to protect kind of our egg there, I think it's a bad time to be packaging things up. That's just my 2 cents. We see a lot more value in allowing a little more of a fine tuning of a budget. We talk a lot about monthly contracts, not yearly or multi-year contracts. That's a tough one when budgets get tight, because you look at something and you say, well, you should sign a year contract, but there's a trade-off there in terms of strategic planning for the customer. So being flexible and being transparent is pretty much the name of the game as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, really interesting. And there isn't a right or wrong answer to that. I know that everyone's sort of grappling with that. I guess slightly related to that, I mean, do you think that your customers or prospective clients are kind of more aware now of security risk? I mean, is the news trickling down? Because obviously in the IT, in our community, we talk about nothing else, right? Pretty much. But I mean, but there are kind of high profile things that are making the mainstream media and mainstream news. Would you say that small to medium sized businesses are more aware now that they need to do more?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's hard to not be. I mean, if you're sort of in the space at all in a professional capacity, it's like, cybersecurity and endpoint security is certainly pretty standard term now. But I think it's interesting because we support both internal teams, IT teams, internal teams, or we are the internal team. So we kind of have both mixes. And it's interesting when you start thinking about using cybersecurity or the fear of an incident, using that as the catalyst for organizational change or, making things better. And it's, we kind of went down that path a couple of years ago and thought, yeah, this is a good way to do it. And people need to take this seriously. And honestly, that I don't really like that anymore. Fear doesn't need to be a component. We all have plenty of things to be afraid of. We don't need another one, right? So it's interesting when you start talking about awareness, because that means, how do you bring awareness? Are you gonna tell them a success story? Because there's just otherwise it's all advertisements and marketing materials with shadows and suspect looking a figure in a hat posing as a threat, a cyber threat. So and that trickles into the users and everything we were talking about with bringing your own device. it's the thing around, are the users afraid of getting in trouble or afraid of something unraveling, and so they don't tell us? And it's because of this sort of, whether it's a culture of fear or not understanding, whatever it is. So again, transparency, flexibility, stuff happens. I think that's a winning attitude for an IT team, whether it's internal or external, to just be a little more open about things, and understand that these are users, right? They're not all the same, and that's okay.
Cool. So let's just zoom out slightly in terms to look at the industry in a little more from a little further away. I mean, do you see the MSP space continuing to grow in the coming years? And I guess the second part of that is why, or if and why do you think it's important for SMEs to work with an MSP? And obviously, in your case, you're also working with end user sort of IT departments as well to augment their capability. So where do you think MSPs are going to be looking at in the next few years? How are they going to fit into the picture?
We think about that a lot, and the particular sort of slice that I'm watching is really in the call it MSP to MSP, or the IT to MSP space. So it's whether it's an internal team, like as you said, or an external standalone MSP, whatever it is, all of those entities are making decisions about tools and creating different surface areas to be monitored and considered. And so then you get, an internal team, an MSP, the reseller, all of a sudden you've got 4 or 5 different parties here. And so where I see the growth is, and what I'm interested in kind of seeing where it goes is the not consolidation, but just the management of all of that.
Right. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. I just got one final question. And this could be, I was thinking about the way this is phrased. This could be advice that you would be offering to a new MSP starting out now, or advice that you would have probably appreciated when you were starting your MSP. What would you have done differently, or what would you say to people to make sure they do if they're just starting?
I would say kind of echoing some of the ideas around how to get into what a new MSP might do to get into the space. It's don't be too quick to settle on a solution. Even something like JumpCloud, which I'll tell you, it's great, and that's not enough. Like you gotta do your research. You gotta understand, what your immediate solution is and where you want to go, because anything that you add to your estate, to your technology estate, is expanding the surface area. So those decisions are important, not just for the solution that they're bringing you in the moment, but long term, what kind of liability are you now, dealing with? What kind of burden is that on your operation? And do you have a good sense of where all the data is, where it's going? So again, observability and just understanding what all the connection points are. Sketch it out, right? Like truly get on a whiteboard. Don't just do a little bit of research and say okay, and then start doing stuff. It's great to skunk works and put stuff together, sure, but next thing you know, you're using the Frankenstein trial version of something for your customers, and it's like, oh, whoa, now this is a big problem. So that's kind of the biggest gotcha, I would say, there for starting out.
No, that's terrific advice. Just sort of plan and get things in place and sort of do it properly. Save a lot of time in the long run, I guess, rather than to unpick all of these solutions down the road. So yeah, that's great advice. Right. So, well, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time and great input. And thanks for being a JumpCloud partner. And we hope to work with you for many years to come. But thanks again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.